The flight had been delayed by nearly 3 hours before suddenly getting cleared for an earlier departure. Sometimes life throws you these curveballs that seem like nuisances until you realize they're actually lifesavers in disguise. I pulled into my driveway in the quaint little town of Ashford just outside London at 9:47 p.m., earlier than the midnight arrival I'd expected. What caught my eye right away was the unusual cluster of cars parked along the street, mostly familiar from various village events, all belonging to women from my wife Emily's social circle. The warm glow from the front windows contrasted sharply with the chilly October night. I could hear the animated buzz of voices drifting through the glass. Emily having friends over wasn't unusual, but the intensity of the conversation was. And she hadn't mentioned a gathering when we spoke earlier that afternoon. I grabbed my overnight bag from the boot and moved toward the front door, fishing for my keys while listening more closely. This wasn't the usual hum of neighbors catching up or a boisterous book club debate. No, this had the sharp edge of a meeting, focused, purposeful, like people hatching a plan. The key turned quietly in the lock, and I slipped inside just enough to step through the doorway. Voices came from the kitchen. As I edged closer, fragments of sentences became clear. Has to ask permission for anything over 20 pounds. Checking his location every hour is reasonable. Weekly performance reviews keep them accountable. I froze in the hallway, my bag still in hand. That was Emily's voice, delivering what sounded like relationship advice. Except it didn't sound like advice. It sounded like orders. I moved silently to the kitchen doorway and peeked in. The scene was both familiar and alien. Around the oak kitchen table sat 5 women, notebooks and printed articles spread out like they were preparing for a war council. Emily sat at the head of the table, animated and engaged in a way I hadn't seen in years, waving a pen as she addressed the group. Monica's system is working perfectly, Emily declared, nodding toward the woman on her right. Monica, recently divorced and still bitter about her ex's supposed financial recklessness, basked in the praise. 3 weeks in, and her husband hasn't made a single unauthorized purchase. The key is consistency. No exceptions, no negotiations. Monica added, voice steely. Men need structure, and we're the ones who have to provide it. Lisa, married 15 years to a bloke working 60-hour weeks to support their family, nodded eagerly. I set up social media monitoring last month, downloaded an app tracking all his online activity. You wouldn't believe how much time he was wasting on football forums. Brilliant, said Amanda, the newlywed of just 8 months. I'm definitely adding that. Prevention's better than cure, right? Jennifer, technically separated but clearly still nursing grievances, chimed in. Location tracking's essential. Men lie about where they are all the time. This way, you always know the truth. I stood there, stunned, listening to 5 women discussing their husbands like they were troublesome pets needing retraining. These weren't strangers, they were my wife's friends. Women I'd shared dinners with, exchanged pleasantries at village fetes. And now they were plotting how to control and monitor their spouses. Monica explained their system with almost evangelical zeal. It creates natural consequences. Follow the rules, earn privileges. Break them, lose them. Basic psychology. Like training a dog, Jennifer laughed, making me shiver. Exactly, Lisa agreed. Positive reinforcement and negative consequences. Men respond to clear structure because, let's face it, their emotional intelligence isn't quite up to scratch. Emily nodded sagely. We're parenting our husbands into better versions of themselves. Someone has to be responsible for their development. Amanda scribbled notes frantically. It feels empowering, like I'm finally taking control of my marriage instead of just crossing my fingers and hoping. Control is the word, Monica said firmly. Women have been too passive for too long. We've been told men will naturally improve, but look at the divorce stats. Jennifer added sharply, half of marriages fail because women don't set proper boundaries from the start. Lisa leaned in conspiratorial. I read this article about how CEOs manage staff. Same principles apply to marriage. Clear objectives, regular reviews, documented expectations, accountability. Emily's eyes lit up. We should use business management techniques, KPIs for husbands. Key performance indicators. Monica translated for Amanda. Measurable goals to track. How often they help around the house. How well they communicate. Showing gratitude. The group buzzed with excitement, throwing around ideas like evidence collection, screenshots of dubious social media activity, receipts for unauthorized spending, logs of wasted time. Yes, Jennifer exclaimed. Evidence-based relationship management. No more trusting their word or hoping for the best. Emily practically bounced in her chair. This could revolutionize marriage. Imagine if every wife had these tools from day one. Save from what? Amanda asked innocently. Men's natural selfishness and irresponsibility, Monica replied patiently. Left unchecked, men will always take the easy option. They need external motivation to be the partners we deserve. Emily pulled out her phone. Look at this text from Sarah. Had to ask my husband's permission to buy coffee today. Rule number 1 is working perfectly. He's actually grateful for the structure. The group erupted in pleased murmurs and congratulations, as if hearing about a scientific breakthrough. We should formalize this, Monica suggested eagerly. Create a handbook. Call it marriage management. A modern wife's guide to structure. Emily's eyes sparkled. We could start a blog, maybe even a book. So many women need this guidance. Lisa was already taking notes. Categories. Financial control, social monitoring, time management, accountability. Don't forget appearance standards. Jennifer added with a smirk. Men have no idea how their choices reflect on us. Someone has to make those decisions for them. A cold, final knot settled in my chest. This wasn't just a friendly chat. It was an organized campaign to control and manipulate. And Emily was leading it. The women had convinced themselves they were experts when really they were control freaks, feeding off each other's validation. I had heard enough. Actually, I had heard far more than enough. I set my bag down quietly and stepped into the kitchen with the calm confidence of someone walking into his own home and unexpectedly finding a secret meeting in session. Evening, love, I said, my voice smooth but light, as if I just stumbled upon a surprise dinner party. Didn't expect to find a conference going on. The chatter stopped instantly. 5 pairs of eyes snapped to me, wide and startled. Emily's expression flickered through a rapid series of emotions. Surprise, guilt, calculation, and then forced brightness. Connor, you're back early. Flight must have changed last minute, she said, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I glanced around the table, nodding politely. Ladies, good to see you all. Don't let me interrupt anything. Sounds like quite the discussion from the hallway. Monica recovered first, her usual arrogance giving her courage. We were just exchanging relationship strategies. Things that have really helped improve our marriages. Relationship strategies, I repeated, arching an eyebrow. That sounds productive. What kind of strategies are we talking about? Emily jumped in eagerly, interpreting my calm tone as interest. We've been researching ways to bring more structure into marriages. Better communication, clearer expectations, that sort of thing. Structure, I said, pulling out the empty chair at the opposite end of the table from Emily. I'm intrigued. Mind if I hear some examples? The women exchanged glances, but their confidence was already reviving. They'd been so deep in their echo chamber that they believed their plans were not just reasonable but brilliant. Lisa leaned forward, ready to share her expertise. Well, financial transparency is key. Husbands should check with their wives before making any significant purchases. How significant? I asked, feigning genuine curiosity. Anything over 20 pounds, Monica said proudly. It stops impulse buys and makes sure household money is spent responsibly. £20, I repeated slowly. So that covers lunch, fuel, groceries, basically everyday expense? Exactly, Amanda chimed in. It makes men think about how their spending affects the whole family. They don't naturally consider it. I nodded thoughtfully, as if absorbing a profound insight. What other areas need structure? That question lit a fire under them. They began talking over each other, eager to showcase their comprehensive approach. Social media monitoring, Jennifer announced. There are apps that track all online activity. No more guessing what they're really doing on their phones. Location sharing, Lisa added. Real-time GPS tracking so you always know where they are. No room for deception. Weekly performance reviews, Emily said proudly. Structured talks about what's working, what isn't, with actual scoring. Scoring systems? I said, maintaining interest. Like report cards? Exactly like report cards, Monica confirmed. With consequences for poor performance. Privileges revoked until improvement. I leaned back, taking it all in. You've clearly put a lot of thought into this system. Emily beamed, mistaking my tone for approval. We've been working on it for months, trialing approaches and refining based on results. And it's working? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Lisa smiled. My husband actually said he appreciates having clearer guidelines. Men want structure. They just don't know how to make it themselves. Fascinating, I said honestly. Not because the system was brilliant, but because they had convinced themselves controlling behavior was a kindness. Monica nodded, adopting an academic tone. Research supports this. Men have lower emotional intelligence and need external structure to function well in relationships. Which studies? I asked, intrigued. Monica faltered briefly. Oh, lots, from Psychology Today to women's magazines. The evidence is everywhere if you know where to look. Interesting, I said. And these studies recommend spousal surveillance and financial control as therapy? Not in those exact words, Lisa said quickly. But that's the principle. Structure, accountability, clear boundaries. Our implementation is our own innovation, Emily added proudly. We've adapted psychological concepts to modern marriage challenges. I nodded slowly. So, you've created an experimental treatment program for relationship dysfunction, with yourselves as researchers and your husbands as test subjects. The women exchanged uneasy looks. It's not experimental when it works, Jennifer said defensively. We have measurable results. Improved compliance, less conflict, better household management. Compliance, I repeated. Interesting word choice for describing a marriage partner. Jennifer backtracked. Cooperation.
Participation.
Engagement with household responsibilities. Through monitoring and consequences, I clarified. Structure and accountability. Monica nodded firmly. The same tools successful businesses use to manage employees. And your husbands agreed to be managed like employees in their own marriages? I asked. An awkward silence. They don't need to explicitly agree, Emily said finally. Sometimes people need structure whether they want it or not. Like kids who resist bedtimes but sleep better with them. So you're treating your husbands like children who don't know what's good for them? We're treating them like partners who need guidance to reach their full potential, Lisa said with forced patience. Everyone has mentors and coaches. We're their relationship coaches. I eyed Jennifer, who pulled out a printed document. We've documented everything. Categories, strategies, enforcement. It's a manual for accountability. Enforcement mechanisms, I repeated. What happens if someone doesn't comply? Their eyes lit up. Financial consequences, Monica said. Cut discretionary spending. No personal purchases. Social consequences, Amanda added. No socializing privileges until they comply. Public accountability. Jennifer continued. Involving other couples creates community pressure. Very effective. Emily nodded. Consistency is key. No exceptions. One slip and the system falls apart. I sat back, absorbing the casual way they'd normalized controlling their husbands in my own kitchen. The nonchalance was almost more unsettling than the content. I stood slowly. Well, this has been educational. Thanks for sharing your research with me. Emily smiled, pleased. We hope more couples adopt these strategies. The results speak for themselves. They certainly do, I said. In fact, I added, I'm so impressed by your system. I'd like to add one rule of my own. The women exchanged puzzled glances. Monica recovered first. What kind of rule? I walked to the head of the table, where Emily sat, all eyes tracking me, sensing something had shifted. Just one simple rule, I said, voice steady and final. Rule number 1 for wives who think they have the right to control their husbands. Emily's smile faltered. What rule, love? I looked her in the eye, then around at her co-conspirators. Rule number 1. Pack a bag. Silence. No one moved or breathed. The weight of those words settled like a physical presence, and I watched each woman process what I just said. What do you mean? Emily asked, though her voice betrayed that she knew exactly. I said calmly. Anyone who thinks they have the right to set behavioral controls for their husband has chosen to be single. The marriage ended the moment you decided I needed managing like a defective child who can't be trusted. Monica tried to laugh, but it came out strangled. Connor, we were just brainstorming. Not serious. Really? I interrupted, pulling out my phone. You mentioned testing and refining methods. Sounds pretty serious to me. I opened my contacts, ready to make some calls. Let me check with your husbands about how unserious this is.
No.
Monica shrieked. Don't call him. He doesn't need to know. Doesn't need to know? I raised an eyebrow. I think he deserves to know his wife's been meeting with other women to design control systems. Jennifer edged toward the door. This is blown out of proportion. Just sharing ideas. Financial control, location tracking, performance reviews, enforcement mechanisms. I said, scrolling. Let me call your husbands, too. Please don't. Jennifer whispered, desperation clear. Stop. Lisa was crying. My husband will think I'm crazy. He works so hard, and if he finds out, then maybe you should have thought about that before planning to monitor his every move. I said bluntly. I found Lisa's husband's number. Should I tell him about the spreadsheets and social media tracking? Or do you want to? Stop, Emily said, standing abruptly. Just stop. It's not what it looks like. I turned to face her. What does it look like, Emily? She started, then stopped, realizing hours of planning couldn't be masked. It looks like you've been planning to control and monitor my behavior. I finished for her. It looks like you've treated our marriage like a management project where you make unilateral decisions about my freedom. Amanda sobbed quietly. We thought we were improving our marriages.
No. Y correcte.
You thought you were gaining power and domination. I began dialing. Monica's husband answered on the second ring. Hey Tom, it's Connor. Sorry to call late, but your wife's been at my house. I thought you should know. Monica's face went pale. The short conversation ended with Tom demanding she come home immediately. She gathered her things, shaking. I dialed Lisa's husband next. Lisa sobbed openly. Jennifer was halfway out the door. Where are you going? I called. I'm separated, she said, panic in her eyes. Separated because you treated him like a child needing constant supervision? She fled without a word. Amanda was the last besides Emily, crying too hard to speak. You've been married 8 months, I said gently. Already planning surveillance and controls. Do you realize how that sounds? She looked up, red-eyed. I don't want to make the same mistakes. I thought if I prevented problems, the only thing you'll prevent is having a husband, I said firmly. I handed her my phone. Call your husband. Let him decide if he wants a wife who treats him like a project. Amanda trembled, set the phone down, then fled. Emily and I were left alone in the kitchen. The silence was heavy. Connor, she whispered. I can explain. Can you? I replied, sitting down. Because I've been listening to explanations for an hour, and they only make it worse. We weren't going to implement everything. It was theoretical, exploring possibilities. I flipped through a notebook filled with detailed plans, timelines, success metrics. This doesn't look theoretical. It looks like a business plan for domestic control. Emily's face crumpled. I got caught up with the group. They were so sure they knew how to fix things. I wanted to belong. So you were willing to sacrifice our marriage to impress toxic friends? I didn't think of it that way. I thought I was learning to be a better wife. A better wife? I repeated slowly. You thought spying, controlling spending, and performance reviews made you better? She had no answer. Marriage works because we respect each other, I said softly but firmly. The moment you decided to manage me was the moment you stopped respecting me. But we can fix this, she said desperately. I'll leave the group, delete everything. That's not the problem, I interrupted. The problem is you thought this was acceptable at all. You spent months planning to control me without questioning it. She looked at me, starting to grasp the seriousness. What do you want me to do? Choose, I said. Keep thinking you know better, or remember marriage is partnership. I choose partnership, she said immediately. Do you? I asked. Partnership means trusting me as an equal, not controlling me. Emily nodded frantically. Yes, I see that now. I studied her, searching for sincerity. Those women? They're facing consequences. Some marriages end tonight. Others take years to heal. Is that what you want for us? No, she whispered. I stood and looked out the kitchen window at the last car pulling away. Rule number 1 isn't a threat, I said quietly. It's a boundary. The moment you chose control, you chose to end this marriage. I'm giving you one chance to choose differently. She gathered the scattered papers without a word and dropped them in the bin. Tears streamed down her face. I'm sorry, she said. I'm sorry I let them convince me control was love. I'm sorry I planned to treat you like a child. I'm sorry I was blind. I nodded slowly. We can rebuild. But you need to think hard about how this happened. 6 months later, Emily and I were stronger than ever. She cut ties with that group and we rebuilt trust and respect. Monica's marriage ended within 2 weeks. Tom filed for divorce after seeing her plans. Lisa's husband moved out for months before counseling. Jennifer's separation became permanent. Amanda barely saved her marriage after her husband found out about the monitoring plans before their first anniversary. Emily learned respect and trust are the foundation, not control and surveillance. I learned sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept bad behavior, even from someone you love. Rule number 1, pack a bag, isn't about ending relationships. It's about making sure the ones that survive are built on respect. And Emily understands that now. Our marriage is better for it. But as I looked out the window that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that some stories don't end with a single rule. Some secrets only deepen with time. The house felt quieter than usual the morning after the confrontation. The kind of silence that buzzes with unspoken tension. Emily moved through the kitchen like a shadow. Her usual bright smile faded into something fragile, almost hesitant. She wore a soft cream blouse that hugged her slender frame, paired with a pencil skirt just brushing her knees. Her chestnut hair was pulled back loosely, a few wisps framing her delicate face. Even her silver pendant necklace, something she'd worn for years, seemed to catch the pale morning light differently, as if reflecting the weight we both carried. I poured myself a cup of black coffee, the bitterness matching the taste of last night's revelations. Emily leaned against the counter, her hands nervously twisting the edge of a faded tea towel. Connor, she began softly. About last night, I didn't realize how far I'd gone. I thought I was just trying to help. I looked up, catching the glint of unshed tears in her hazel eyes. Help by building a surveillance state in our marriage? She winced, then gave a small, rueful smile. When you put it like that, it sounds awful, but I was scared. Scared of losing you, scared of things falling apart. I thought if I could control the chaos, maybe I could fix us. Control's a tricky thing, I said, setting my mug down. It's less about fixing and more about breaking sometimes. She nodded, biting her lower lip. I guess I forgot we're partners, not CEO and employee. I was treating you like a project, not a person. Her admission hit me harder than I expected. There was something raw and real beneath the layers of hurt. A desperate attempt at connection, twisted by fear. I reached out tentatively, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. Emily, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes too. But if we want this to work, we need to stop trying to manage each other and start trusting. Her breath hitched slightly, and she swallowed hard. Trust. That's the hard part. After everything. I smiled faintly. Trust is built in moments like this. When you're honest, even when it's painful. As we stood there, the tension slowly melted, replaced by a fragile hope. But beneath that hope lurked a question neither of us dared voice. How deep did the damage go? How much of Emily's fear had been seeded by those women? And how much was a symptom of cracks that had already formed? Later that day, Emily mentioned wanting to meet with a counselor. Not because I demanded it, but because she truly wanted to understand herself and us. I admired that bravery. It was easier to wield control than to confront vulnerability. That evening, as we prepared dinner together, Emily wore a soft burgundy dress, its delicate lace sleeves hinting at the woman she wanted to be, strong yet tender. Her black ankle boots clicked softly against the wooden floor. She laughed at my terrible joke about burnt toast being the pinnacle of culinary arts, a sound I'd missed more than I realized. But just as the warmth returned between us, my phone buzzed with a message I hadn't expected. An anonymous text. You think you've seen the whole plan? You're only scratching the surface. I showed Emily. Her smile faltered, eyes narrowing. What does that mean? I don't know, I admitted. But I intend to find out. The mystery hung in the air like a dark cloud, threatening everything we just started to rebuild. And suddenly, that old, familiar fear crept back. Because some lies don't stay buried, and some control runs deeper than you think. The next morning, the chill in the air matched the knot tightening in my stomach. Emily was already gone when I woke, leaving a note on the kitchen table in her neat, looping handwriting. Asterisk, gone to meet someone. I'll explain later. Don't wait up. Asterisk, the words felt like a puzzle piece forced into place, but the picture it formed was unclear. I dressed quickly, slipping into my usual navy blazer and crisp white shirt, trying to shake off the creeping unease. The house was eerily silent, the morning sun casting long shadows across the polished oak floor. I couldn't help but replay the anonymous text from the night before. Who sent it? What else was lurking beneath the surface? I decided to take a walk through Ashford, hoping the cool autumn breeze would clear my head. The village was waking up, Mrs. Hargreaves setting out fresh blooms in the flower shop window, the smell of freshly baked bread drifting from Tom's bakery, and a couple of early risers chatting outside the local pub, the King's Arms. Life went on, oblivious to the turmoil in my own world. Lost in thought, I nearly collided with a woman stepping out of the village library. She was tall, with sharp green eyes framed by a cascade of auburn hair. Her tailored trench coat swirled around her calves, and the hint of red lipstick she wore made her stand out even in this sleepy town. Sorry, she said with a polite smile. Didn't see you there. No harm done, I replied, noticing a leather-bound notebook tucked under her arm. Are you new around here? She hesitated, then nodded. Just moved from London.
I'm Claire.
I work in research. Connor, I said, shaking her hand. Research, you say? What kind? She glanced around cautiously before leaning in slightly. Let's just say it involves relationships, and sometimes the darker side of human behavior. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. Sounds intriguing. Mind if I ask what brought you to Ashford? Clara's smile faded, replaced by something more guarded. I'm following a story. One that's closer to home than I'd like. Her words echoed the unease I'd been feeling since last night. Was she connected to Emily's mysterious message? Before I could ask more, Clara's phone buzzed insistently. She glanced at it, then back at me. I have to go, she said abruptly. But Connor, be careful who you trust. And just like that, she disappeared down the cobbled street, leaving me with more questions than answers. Back home, the door was unlocked. I stepped inside cautiously, the silence thick and suffocating. Emily's note was still on the table, but there was something new, a single photograph resting beside it. Picked it up, my heart pounding. The photo showed Emily, surrounded by the same 5 women from that night, but this time in a dimly lit room I didn't recognize. On the table before them lay a laptop, papers covered in cryptic graphs and lists, and a phone displaying a list of names. names that included mine. At the bottom, scrawled hastily in red ink, was a single chilling phrase. Asterisk, not just control. This is bigger. Asterisk. I sank into the nearest chair, the weight of the mystery pressing down like a thundercloud. What had Emily gotten herself tangled in? And how deep did this web of control and secrets really go? Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window panes. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A sharp, urgent sound that seemed to warn me. The game had changed, and I was no longer just a player. I was a target. The evening settled over Ashford like a velvet curtain, deepening the shadows in the corners of our home. I sat alone at the kitchen table, the photograph still clutched in my hand, fingers tracing the edges as if it might reveal its secrets through touch. Emily hadn't returned, and my phone was silent, no calls, no messages. The house felt too big without her, every creak and whisper reminding me how much had shifted in just a few days. A sudden knock jolted me from my thoughts. I wasn't expecting anyone. Heart pounding, I moved to the door and opened it cautiously. Standing there was Clara, the woman I'd met earlier, the emerald eyes shining in the dusk. "Mind if I come in?" she asked, voice low and urgent. I stepped aside, and she entered, closing the door softly behind her. Clara's presence was both comforting and unnerving, like a storm cloud promising rain but bringing clarity. "I know this sounds strange," she began, pulling a slim folder from her bag, "but I've been looking into a group operating in this area. Women who've banded together under the guise of marriage improvement. It's more than that, though. It's about control, manipulation, even coercion." I nodded slowly, recalling the kitchen meeting, the notebooks, the spreadsheets. "And Emily's part of it?" Clara hesitated. "She's deeply involved. But there's something else. This group isn't just about controlling their husbands. There are layers, financial, social, psychological. They've created a system that's almost industrial." "Industrial?" I echoed, the word heavy. "Yes," Clara said, pulling out a printed chart. "They track behavior like data points, set rules, monitor compliance, enforce consequences. It's like a corporate performance review, only the employees are husbands." I swallowed hard. "It's like they're running a business, not a marriage." "Exactly," Clara said grimly. "And the more I dig, the more I see how widespread it is. This isn't just a village problem. It's a network." I looked at her, disbelief and fear swirling. "Why are you telling me all this?" "Because you're in danger," Clara said, lowering her voice. "This group doesn't take kindly to outsiders poking around. And Emily, she might not realize how far she's gone." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed sharply on the table. I glanced at the screen, an unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Connor," a distorted voice whispered. "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." The line went dead. Clara's eyes widened. That was a warning. I clenched my fists, anger rising beneath the fear. "I'm not stopping. Not until I know the truth." She nodded, respect flickering in her gaze. "Good, because the deeper you go, the darker it gets." As Clara prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "One last thing, trust no one. Not even those closest to you." The silence that followed was deafening. I closed the door behind her and leaned against it, the weight of her words settling like a stone in my chest. Outside, the night deepened, and the village lights twinkled unsuspecting. But beneath the calm surface, a storm was gathering, and I was standing right in the eye of it. The next morning dawned cold and gray, with heavy clouds hanging low over Ashford as if warning of the storm to come. I sat by the kitchen window, nursing a lukewarm cup of tea, trying to process everything Clara had told me. The walls of our home, once a refuge, now felt like they were closing in, thick with secrets and unspoken fears. Emily still hadn't come back, and my phone remained stubbornly silent. The unanswered calls I left felt like whispers disappearing into an empty void. I couldn't shake the image of her surrounded by those women, plotting like generals in a war room. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how little I truly knew about the person I'd married. Determined to get answers, I decided to visit Emily's closest friend, Monica, the ringleader of the group. If anyone could shed light on what was happening, it was her. I pulled on my coat, grabbed my umbrella against the drizzle, and headed out. Monica's house was a modest brick cottage on the edge of the village, its garden immaculately kept despite the damp. I rang the bell, and she answered almost immediately, her sharp blue eyes narrowing as she took me in. She wore a tailored navy dress that hugged her curves, paired with sleek black heels that clicked assertively on the doorstep. "Connor," she said, voice smooth but guarded. "I wasn't expecting you." "I need to talk," I said bluntly. "About Emily and the group." Her smile was tight. "Come in." Inside, the air smelled faintly of jasmine and polished wood. Monica gestured for me to sit in the cozy sitting room, where plush cushions and soft lighting created a false sense of comfort. "So," she began, pouring tea into delicate china cups. "What exactly do you want to know?" I met her gaze steadily. "Everything. What's this group? What are you doing? And why is Emily involved?" Monica sighed, settling back into her chair like she was preparing for a confession. "We're a support network. Women who want better marriages, who've grown tired of partners who don't meet expectations." "Support network or control freak club?" I shot back. Her eyes flashed. "It's about empowerment, setting boundaries, creating accountability. Men need structure. They thrive on it." "Men aren't children," I said firmly. "They're not projects to be managed." Monica smiled, but there was no warmth. "That's easy to say when you're on the other side of the equation." I leaned forward. "Emily's scared, isn't she? Afraid of losing you, of losing control. But this isn't love. It's manipulation." Monica's expression darkened. "You don't understand. This isn't just about Emily. It's about all of us. We're fighting back against a system that's failed us." Her words hung heavy in the room, but beneath the conviction, I sensed something else, fear. Fear of losing the fragile power they'd clawed back. Suddenly, Monica's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then back at me. "You should go," she said, voice low. "This conversation isn't welcome by everyone." As I left her house, rain began to fall harder, cold drops soaking into my collar. The village felt different now, less familiar, more like a cage. I pulled my coat tighter and walked toward home, knowing that the deeper I delved, the more dangerous the truth became. But there was no turning back now. Not when everything I cared about was on the line. The rain hammered against the windows as I sat in the dim glow of the living room, the storm outside mirroring the turmoil inside me. My mind replayed the conversation with Monica. Her words, her conviction, and that shadow of fear lurking beneath her calm exterior. This wasn't just some harmless club. It was a battleground, and I was right in the thick of it. Emily still hadn't come home. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the old house settling and the steady drip of rain from the eaves. I paced the room, hands stuffed deep into the pockets of my worn leather jacket, trying to make sense of the chaos. Suddenly, my phone buzzed sharply. A message from an unknown number. Asterisk, meet me at the Fox and Hound. Midnight. Alone. Asterisk. I stared at the screen, the words glowing ominously. The Fox and Hound was the village pub, a cozy little place with wooden beams and a roaring fireplace. A far cry from the covert world I was being pulled into. Midnight. Alone. The message was a challenge, a summons I couldn't ignore. I grabbed my coat and headed out, the rain soaking through before I even reached the door. The streets were empty, the village asleep under a thick blanket of fog and drizzle. The path to the pub felt longer than usual, shadows stretching and twisting in the lamplight. Inside the Fox and Hound, the warmth was a shock to my chilled bones. The low murmur of voices, clinking glasses, and the rich scent of ale and roasting meat should have been comforting. Instead, the atmosphere felt charged, as if the walls themselves were listening. I scanned the room. Most tables were occupied by regulars, farmers, shopkeepers, a few late-shift workers. No sign of my mysterious contact. Then, from a dark corner near the fireplace, A figure detached itself from the shadows. Clara. Her auburn hair was slightly damp, strands clinging to her face, and her green eyes held that same sharp intensity. She wore a sleek black coat over a form-fitting dress, her ruby-red heels clicking softly on the wooden floor. "Connor," she said quietly, "I didn't expect you to come." "Neither did I," I replied, sliding into the seat opposite her. She leaned in, voice low. "You're in deeper than you know. The group's reach extends far beyond Ashford. They have eyes everywhere." I swallowed hard. What do they want? Why go to such lengths? Clara's gaze darkened. Control is just the surface. There's money involved, investments, assets manipulated through these accounts they monitor. And power. Social power. They're building a network that can influence more than just marriages. I blinked, stunned. "You're saying it's an operation? Like a secret society?" "Exactly," she said. "And Emily's not just a member. She's become one of their key players." The fire crackled between us, casting flickering shadows over Clara's determined face. "You need to decide what you're willing to risk. This isn't just about your marriage anymore. It's about exposing something much bigger and dangerous." A sudden noise from the door made us both turn sharply. A man in a dark coat stepped inside, eyes scanning the room until they locked on us. He paused, then smiled thinly. "Evening, Connor," he said smoothly. "Fancy seeing you here." Clara's hand tightened into a fist. "We're leaving." The man's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Not so fast. You've stirred the hornet's nest now." As tension crackled like static in the air, I realized this midnight meeting was only the beginning. The deeper I dug, the darker the web became, and escaping it would take more than courage. It would take everything I had. The man's presence filled the room like a sudden blackout, sharp, unnerving, impossible to ignore. His tailored charcoal coat clung to his broad shoulders, and the faint scent of expensive cologne hung in the air. His eyes, cold and calculating, were fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Connor," he said smoothly, voice low but edged with menace. "I suggest you reconsider your little investigation." I met his gaze steadily, refusing to show the flicker of fear that threatened to rise. "Who are you?" He smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Let's just say I'm someone with vested interests in keeping certain arrangements intact." Clara shifted beside me, her hand barely touching my arm. A silent warning. "We should go. Now." The man's smile twisted into a smirk. "Leaving so soon? I was hoping for a chat." Before I could respond, the pub door swung open again, and two more figures slipped inside. Both women. One was tall, with raven black hair and piercing blue eyes. The other shorter, with a sharp bob and an icy stare. They scanned the room, their gazes locking on us. "Ladies," the man said smoothly, "you're just in time." The trio approached our table, their presence as commanding as a courtroom judge's gavel. The taller woman's eyes rested on me, cold and unyielding. "You've been asking questions," she said, voice crisp. "Questions that unsettle the delicate balance we've worked hard to maintain." Clara stood abruptly. "We have every right to ask questions. Secrets like these don't belong in the shadows." The shorter woman smiled thinly. "And yet, some truths are best left buried." The tension in the room thickened, the air charged with unspoken threats. I glanced at Clara, then back at the newcomers. This wasn't just about Emily or even our village anymore. It was a power play on a scale I hadn't imagined. The man leaned in, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You think you're heroes, but you're pawns in a much larger game." I swallowed, heart pounding, but refused to back down. "Maybe, but every pawn has the power to change the board." The woman with blue eyes stepped closer, her gaze piercing. "Be careful, Connor. Challenge us too much, and the consequences won't just be personal." The pub's cozy warmth felt like a trap closing in. I realized then that this tangled web of control and secrets stretched far wider and darker than I ever thought possible. As the four of them encircled us, I steadied my breath, knowing that this confrontation was only the beginning. One move in a dangerous game where trust was the rarest currency, and betrayal lurked in every shadow. The weight in the room was suffocating, thick with menace and unspoken threats. The four figures surrounding Clara and me exuded a chilling confidence, like predators sizing up their prey. The pub's warm glow suddenly felt cold and unwelcoming. I met the woman with piercing blue eyes head-on. You say some truths are best left buried, but I'm here to unearth them. Her lips curled into a faint, dangerous smile. Brave words, but bravery without caution is a fast ticket to ruin. The man in the charcoal coat stepped closer, his shadow stretching over the table. You've stirred forces beyond your understanding. This isn't just about controlling marriages or village politics. It's about power, money, influence. And people like you don't belong in our world. Clara's fingers tightened around my hand, grounding me. We belong wherever there's injustice. You can't silence everyone. The shorter woman's icy gaze flicked to Clara. You're remarkably bold for someone so new. I felt a flicker of admiration for Clara's courage. Sometimes new blood is exactly what's needed. There was a tense pause, the kind that stretches seconds into eternities. Then, unexpectedly, the raven-haired woman laughed softly. Perhaps, but every revolution devours its children. The taller woman's smile faded into a cold glare. You have one chance to walk away, Connor. Leave this alone before it's too late. I straightened, voice steady. Not a chance. Emily deserves better than being part of this manipulation. The man's expression darkened. Then you leave us no choice. Suddenly, the pub's front door burst open, and a figure stepped inside. Emily. She looked different, no longer the hesitant woman I'd known. Her dress was sleek, midnight blue, hugging her curves with an elegance that commanded attention. Her auburn hair was swept back, revealing a face set with determination and steel. On her wrist glinted a delicate silver bracelet, catching the firelight. Enough, she said, voice calm but firm. All eyes turned to her. The tension shifted, a new energy pulsing through the room. Emily took a slow step forward, meeting my gaze. Connor, you don't understand what we're trying to do. I shook my head. I understand perfectly, and I won't let you lose yourself in this. She smiled, a bittersweet curve of lips. Maybe it's too late for me, but it's not too late for us. The room held its breath, the fragile line between alliance and opposition hanging by a thread. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about control or rebellion. It was about fighting for the very soul of our marriage. And the battle was far from over. Emily's eyes locked onto mine, fierce and unwavering. The room seemed to hold its breath, the crackling fire casting shadows that danced across her determined face. Connor, she said quietly, this isn't just about control or manipulation. It's about survival, ours, and those women who've been ignored, dismissed, and left powerless for too long. I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Love, frustration, fear, all tangled in a knot I wasn't sure how to unravel. Survival doesn't come from cages, Emily. Comes from trust, from respect. She nodded slowly, the tension in her shoulders easing just a fraction. I know, I lost sight of that, but the path back isn't easy. The room was silent except for the distant rumble of thunder rolling over Ashford. The four others watched us, their expressions unreadable, as if waiting for the next move in a game with no clear rules. Then Emily turned to them, voice steady. We need to end this now. No more secrets, no more control. It's time to rebuild what we've broken. The taller woman with the piercing blue eyes stepped forward, her gaze softening. Are you sure? Walking away means losing power. Emily's smile was sad but resolute. Some things are worth more than power. The man in the charcoal coat exchanged a glance with the others and finally nodded. Very well. But know this, the consequences of crossing this line won't fade easily. As they turned to leave, Clara gripped my hand tightly. We've won a battle, not the war. Emily looked at me, eyes shining with a mix of hope and uncertainty. Ready to fight for us? I reached out, pulling her into a tentative embrace. Always. Outside, the storm broke, rain pelting the windows as if washing away the darkness. But beneath the falling rain, a new mystery stirred. A message left unseen on my phone. Asterisk, not everyone wants peace. Watch your back. Asterisk. I pulled Emily closer, knowing the road ahead would be long and uncertain. But for the first time in months, I believed we might just make it through together. And somewhere deep in the shadows, the real game was only just beginning.